The Lilies of the Field by William E. Barrett. Chapter 1. There's a young legend developing on the west side of the mountains. It will inevitably grow with the years. Like all legends, it is composed of falsehood and fact. In this case, the truth is more compelling than the trappings of imagination with which it has been invested. The man, who has become a legendary figure, was perhaps of greater stature and simple reality than he ever will be in the oft-repeated and expanded tales which commemorate his deeds. Here, before the whole matter gets out of hand, is how it was. His name was Homer Smith. He was 24. He stood at 6'2", and his skin was a deep, warm black. He had large, strong features and widely spaced eyes. A sculptor would have interpreted the features in terms of character, but Homer Smith's mother had once said of him that he was 2 parts amiable and 1 part plain devil. It was a verdict that he accepted as he accepted the days that came to him. He lived his life one day at a time. There was laughter in him. He was a buck sergeant when he received his Army discharge at Fort Lewis. The Army years had been good to him, and he had accumulated a sum of money through some slight thrift, much moonlighting, and occasional gambling luck. He bought a second-hand station wagon in Seattle, equipped it for sleeping, and started out to see the West. He had not believed much of what he heard in the Army, and he did not believe the tales that Westerners told about their country. He was, however, a curious man. On a morning in May, Homer Smith drove into a valley west of the Rocky Mountain Range. Spring, which had stood aloof from him on the higher levels, moved down the valley to meet him. Blue, yellow, and pink flowers twinkled in the tawny expanse of buffalo and grama grass. He had grown up in South Carolina, a far different land from this. On his left, as he drove south, blue and purple-tinted mountains tipped with snow formed a seemingly unbroken barrier against the east, and everything that the east represented. In this country, he had discovered there was no south. South was merely an adjective prefixed to the noun west. Where the road curved away from the mountains to parallel a narrow, sluggish stream, he saw the women. One of them was working in an area of cultivated land, and 3 more were building a fence behind a dilapidated farmhouse. There were no men visible, and that was curious. The women wore bulky-looking garments, and they had white cloths tied scarf fashion around their heads. Homer appraised the house and the outbuildings with one glance. "Place needs a lot of work," he said. He hadn't worked for a week. It wasn't necessary that he work unless he felt the urge. In that fact lay a new concept of freedom. He was a man of many skills, and when he became restless with idle traveling, he had no difficulty in finding work to do. When work became onerous or the road called to him, he moved on. Impulse turned the wheel, and he drove into a badly rutted road which led to the farmhouse. The woman in the field paused briefly to look toward the station wagon, and so did the 3 women who were building a fence. A mere turning of heads, a brief pause before resuming the tasks which occupied them. The short, squat, older woman, who walked into the sunlight from the direction of the chicken run, stood and watched Homer as he braked to a stop and slid from under the wheel. He chuckled in recognition of a familiar type. This was the sergeant, the top, the boss of these other women. No doubt about it. "If you need a day's work done," he said cheerfully, "I'm for hire." The woman had a hard, weather-beaten look. There were many deep lines on the broad surface of her face. Her eyes were small and sharply intent. She measured Homer before she spoke. She had a deep, guttural voice. "Gott is good," she said. "He has sent me a big, strong man." Homer was intrigued by the heavy German accent, the careful spacing of words. He was amused, too, at the idea which the words conveyed. "I don't know," he said. "He didn't say anything to me about sending me someplace. I was just passing by." Ja, you did not pass. There was aggressiveness in this old woman, an air of certainty which is the mark of bosses. Homer felt antagonism stir in him, but it was a fine day and he was carrying the day in his spirit. He had no quarrel with anyone. He waved one hand. I can build that fence better than those girls you got, he said. All of the lines in the woman's face seemed to draw together. He could see the effort that she was making to translate what he said in her own mind. He smiled reassuringly and strolled away from her. The three women had their fence half built, a high fence enclosing an area behind the house. Someone had dug post holes and spotted the posts in place. The women had fresh, unpainted planks, and their method was for one woman to brace herself against the post, another to steady the plank, and the third to drive the nails. All things considered, they were not doing badly. They stopped work, startled, when Homer's tall figure loomed over them. He gripped the post and shook it. It was a more solid job than he anticipated. The older woman was right behind him. "Nein!" she said. Her voice sputtered through 3 emphatic German sentences, and he did not have to understand the words. She did not want him meddling with the fence. She had other work for him to do. He turned, and the woman tapped herself on the chest. He caught the words, Mater Maria Martha, which registered as a name. She indicated each of the 3 women in turn with a jabbing forefinger. Sister Elizabeth, Sister Gertrude, Sister Agnes. Religious folk, Homer thought. He nodded his head to each of them. I'm real happy to meet you, he said. I'm Homer Smith. Mother Maria Martha formed his name silently with her lips, then uttered it as it translated in her mind. Homerus Schmidt. Oh, Ja, Schmidt! Broad smiles broke across the faces of the 3 women. This was something that they could understand, a stranger named Schmidt. Their smiles made him welcome, and Homer felt immediately at ease with them. They did not have any color line. He was just people to them. He made another attempt to do something about the fence, but the harsh voice of the older woman stopped him at the first gesture. Nein, Schmidt, she said. She pointed to the roof and delivered herself of another series of inexplicable sentences. Homer understood her without difficulty. This old woman was a natural boss, and bosses always got their ideas across. She wanted the roof fixed. That's not something you do with Scotch tape and chewing gum, he said. I'll need a good ladder and shingles and the right kind of nails. She made no effort to understand him. She merely anticipated him. With a purposeful stride, she led the way to the barn. There was a large room given over to tools and equipment. She had shingles, not enough to reshingle a roof, but enough to repair one that was not too far gone. She had nails of several sizes, including 3D flatheads. She had roofing cement. She had a ladder. Homer looked at her with respect. Here was a woman who knew what had to be done and what was needed to do it. Okay, he said. I'll fix it good. He was happy when he climbed the ladder and looked out over the valley. There was a chill in the wind, but the sun was warm. He could see the 3 women worked doggedly on their fence, and from his point of vantage, he could see what the fence enclosed. There was nothing in that little patch except a small statue and a privy. How about that? He said softly. All that work for just privacy? Way out here where there's nobody? There was another privy north of the barn behind the foundation which marked the side of the house that had obviously burned down. This, he decided, was where the hired man had lived once, in a smaller house. It was curious that a fire would burn a man's house down and leave his privy standing. It hardly seemed sensible. He surveyed the roof carefully, aware from the markings that someone had surveyed it before him, indicating the places where it would have to be repaired. He was glad of that, because a man couldn't tell from the outside where a wood shingle roof leaked. and he had not been invited inside. He wondered if the women would have done this job if he hadn't come along. Probably so. He looked down on the women who were beating away at the fence planks with a hammer. It would be comical, he thought, to watch them on this roof beating on those shingles. He worked while he amused himself, thinking, rocking the broken and warped shingles to break them away from the hidden nails, sliding new shingles in place and nailing them, covering the nails with roofing cement. He worked swiftly, easily, finding the rhythm best suited to the job and maintaining it. He didn't count time, and he was startled when a deep, heavy, carrying voice called, "Schmidt!" Mother Maria Martha was gesturing him down. The other women had already entered the house. The sun was directly overhead. Lunchtime. He scrambled down the ladder and slowed his pace as he approached the door of the house. There was a crucifix above the door, not a rugged Protestant cross, but a crucifix. The word Catholic came into his mind, and with it the strange, awesome word, nun. It had not occurred to him that these women were nuns. He found the idea incredible. What were they doing out there building fences? They were standing in their places at a rough pine rectangular table that lacked a tablecloth, two on each side. Mother Maria Martha at the head and a place for him facing her. When he stood in his place, the older woman made the sign of the cross and the others followed her example. There was no doubt now. This was a Catholic place, and these were nuns. Homer didn't join in the prayer and couldn't have done so if his Baptist conscience had permitted it. They prayed in German. It was a long prayer, and at a certain point the rhythm changed as though something new had been added, something that wasn't in the memorized pattern. Homer was sensitive to rhythm. He was sensitive, too, to attitudes toward himself, a sensitivity born of race and skin color that set a man apart. He had delicate, invisible antennae which told him when he was noticed or discussed. He knew at the change in the prayer that these women were praying about him. The knowledge made him vaguely uncomfortable. Nobody was going to pray about getting a roof fixed, particularly a roof that wasn't in very bad shape. There had to be more to it than that. Amen was the signal to be seated. Lunch consisted of thick cheese slices and coarse bread from a homemade loaf that was like a big swollen pancake, but solid. There was a glass of milk at each place. No coffee. Nobody talked, and Homer studied the faces without staring at anybody. These were not young women, but two of them had a young look in spite of weather-roughened skin and tight dish towel turbans that concealed their hair. Sister Gertrude, who was the shortest nun, the one with the longest nose, and Sister Albertine, who was frail-looking with large eyes, very blue. The other two, Sister Elizabeth and Sister Agnes, were sturdier and had broad faces. The eyes of Sister Elizabeth were brown. Mother Maria Martha presided grimly, and it was obvious that no one was going to dawdle over lunch. All hands were going to eat in a hurry and go back to work. The sisters seemingly paid no attention to Homer Smith, but he was aware of occasional hurried glances in his direction, and more important to him, he felt friendliness. When he went back to his roof, he was humming, and the hum grew to full song as he fell into the rhythm of the work. This was an interesting experience. The pay probably wouldn't be much. He didn't care. Maybe he wouldn't take any pay. He didn't know. Come night, he'd roll again. In the pink of the evening, as he was cleaning the roof gutters, he saw Sister Agnes bringing in a cow, one cow in a country of herds. A few minutes later, as he gathered up his stools, he saw Mother Maria Martha emerge from the house, followed by Sisters Elizabeth and Gertrude, who were carrying an army cot. The older woman carried a bucket. He watched them momentarily baffled, but when the tool room in the barn became their obvious designation, he put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. "They're doing that for me," he said. "Room and bath." The idea touched him. a cot to sleep on, and a bucket in which to wash. It was what they had. He swung down the ladder and followed them with long strides. They turned, startled, when they heard him. The two sisters held firmly to the cot. It was not army, merely army type, the kind that are sold in surplus stores, collapsible and cheaply made. "I didn't figure to stay," he said, "but I've got me a bed in the car." Mother Maria Martha did not understand him, so he gestured to the car and turned toward it. She followed him. The two sisters, after a moment of hesitation and lacking definite instructions, joined the procession, still carrying the cot. He opened the station wagon from the rear and showed them the bed on which he slept. He had equipped that vehicle for living. He had his own bucket, too, a footlocker, a tool chest, and a guitar. The older nun nodded, then spoke to the other two in rapid-fire German. They started back to the house with the cot. "Das ist gut, Schmidt," she said. "For supper, I ring a bell." She walked away, and Homer filled his bucket at the well, hauling it behind the barn for his wash-up. Supper was preceded by an even longer prayer than the one at lunch and was only slightly more substantial as a meal. Sister Albertine served omelet with the coarse bread and a glass of milk. This was it. A house full of people living on the efforts of one cow and a few chickens. When another prayer had been said, two of the nuns made deft work of clearing away the dishes. There was a general air of relaxation. Sister Albertine, with badly concealed excitement, departed on a mysterious errand. Mother Maria Martha sat less stiffly in her chair. "We are German," she said. "Mit two from Hungary. We learn der English." Sister Albertine returned with a small, tiny, wind-up model phonograph, the type that is bought for very young children. She placed a record on the turntable when the dishwashing nuns returned. A harsh, badly distorted voice squawked something in German from the speaker, followed by the English equivalent. The 5 voices repeated the English, including, in the pronunciation, all of the phonograph noises. "Please send the valet up to my room," they said. "I have something to be pressed. Do not starch the collars of the shirts. Here is my laundry list. 4 shirts, 5 pairs of socks, 1 blouse, 2 pajamas." Homer listened fascinated and repelled. He had never been exposed to the problem of learning another language. He resented the voice on the record, which wasted the time of these people by teaching them to say stupid things. These nuns weren't ever going to see a valet, and they weren't going to have anything pressed. He had an expressive face, and Mother Maria Martha read it when the pause at the end of the record occurred. She halted Sister Albertine, who was about to turn the record over. "Wait," she said. "Schmidt, he speaks der English." Homer sat suspended in the sudden hush, aware of the eyes. He was suddenly elevated above his status as a big, strong man, above the disembodied voice on the record. Sister Albertine was so carried away that she spoke without waiting for permission. She pointed to the phonograph. "What is named this?" she said. "A phonograph." Homer's reply broke down discipline. If Sister Albertine could ask a question, so could anyone else. Each nun was indicating some object in the room. He named them as rapidly as he could, trying to speak the words distinctly. He could tell from their delighted expressions that they already knew the words table, chair, window, door, and the words for the other familiar objects. His identification pleased them by confirming what they knew. Mother Maria Martha put a stop to the obvious. She went through the pantomime of shaking hands with one of the nuns, and he told her what she was doing, pointing out the you and the her. He became self-conscious about the South Carolina in his voice. "If you learn English from me," he said apologetically, You're sure enough going to get yourself segregated some places." They looked at him uncomprehendingly, and he let the subject drop. That was something that he could not explain even to himself. Sister Albertine was drawing a sketch on a piece of paper. She showed it to him. It was a very good sketch of his station wagon. "Automobile? No," she said. "Autobus? No." She knew that it had a special name, and she did better with English than did the others. They were all interested, but when he told them that it was a station wagon, he drew blank looks. With a few deft strokes, the nun drew a depot, then a wagon. This was a station, and this a wagon. How could you put them together and obtain something that resembled an automobile? He did not explain that very well, but he tried. He was sorry when Mother Maria Martha clapped her hands as a signal that class was over. He walked to his home on wheels in the cool darkness, with 1,000 stars swung low above him, and his brain filled with strange rhythms, German words and English words flavored with German. He did not ask himself why he was spending the night. He was here, and it happened. He wondered which of the nuns would have slept on the floor and managed without a bucket if he hadn't had his own equipment. These nuns are nice people, he thought, and that old lady's got a shrewd mind, loose and easy.